Today we are interviewing Aurora, one of the Pacific Northwest's longest playing knights. You'll learn about where she started and hear about some of the early history of the Kingdom of the Valley of Silver Rings. VSR was one of the two kingdoms that became the Kingdom of Blackspire. We also discuss the tradition of vigils before knightings, and Aurora tells us of her own vigil, and much more. For more LARP content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now on to the episode. Welcome to LARP Chats. I'm your host, Bale Norn, and today I have Aurora as our guest. Yours?
Oh, goodness. Started in 94. So, a long time. 27?
27 years?
27 years, is that right?
That's older than my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. My knight's belt's older than a lot of my squires. It's true.
That's something.
Yeah.
It's good to have longevity in the game. It helps keep the culture
Agreed.
more fluid between the,
More consistent.
generations. Yeah, consistent. Do you remember when you first heard about Amtgard?
Yes. I was in college. I was a sophomore in college, and the guy that I was dating at the time said, "Hey, can you give me a ride to fighter practice?" Because he didn't have a car, and I did. And I was like, "Yeah, sure. What's fighter practice?" Take him to the park. There's a bunch of people hitting each other with foam sticks, some garb, some not garb. At the time, a lot of people did garb for fighter practice. It was like, hey, we're going to use the excuse to hit each other, and we're going to dress up and look fun doing it, because it was looked at as a opportunity for people to see what was going on. So fighter practice was almost always in garb, much like Saturdays were in garb.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do. I remember that. And took him to fighter practice, and everybody was like, ooh, look, pretty girl. I was like, yeah, I'm not staying. This is so not my thing. And he asked me for a ride again the next week, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take a book. And after a couple of weeks, I was like, maybe I'll pick up something. And I was like, oh, you mean I can sew things? And it kind of went from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Just kind of eased into it a little bit.
Snowball effect that kind of picked up speed as it went. Yeah.
I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, what college did you go to? Was it Linfield?
I went to Linfield College in McMinnville, Oregon. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And still friends with the guy that I was dating at the time. He's married now, and his kids are actually about ready to graduate college, so it comes full circle.
I met a lot of people that went to Linfield College that went to Amtgard. It was crazy.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Shrouded Valley was the land there at the time that was under VSR, and it was we had a pretty good sized park. You know,
That's
for back in the day.
First time I saw Amtgard was at Shrouded Valley.
Yep, that's where it was. That's where I started. Yep.
Well, I had no idea. I knew that you started in the Pacific Northwest, but I didn't know it was that local. I mean, to me.
Right, absolutely. In fact, the guy that started that park was Jonathan Hugtree, and he had a banner that was red with a silver bar across the top of it. And he wanted to put a black chalice in the middle because it was wine country. You know, McMinnville, that's like Sokol Blosser's out there and a whole bunch of the other wineries out there and whatnot. And so he was kind of doing it as a nod to that part of the state. And there were half a dozen of us that talked with him about what to do with the land heraldry, and the chalice was kind of like, hey, we could do this thing. Stick it on the existing banner that he already had. And the plan was that each of the people who were part of that conversation was going to take that section of the banner and kind of do their own heraldry off of it. And I was the only one that did. So if my personal heraldry is a burgundy field, there's a silver banner bar at the top of the chief with a black chalice in the center of the chief, and then the golden sun, and then there's the green valley at the bottom with the gold crescent, and all of that came from the original Shrouded Valley heraldry.
Wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
I like stories where the heraldry actually means something, and it comes, like, we're not very in Amtgard like heraldry, like specific. We don't follow the rules.
No.
We just make something that we like.
Yeah, oh, it's pretty. I like this.
Yeah, and I like hearing stories where there's something personal about your heraldry, and it's not just, oh, I liked it.
Right. Nope, it's a very traditional, I mean, there's elements of me in there too, but it also is a nod to where I started and where I came from, and I've kept it all this time.
I did something similar myself.
Nice.
Although not as organized as what you guys were trying to do. It seems quite often when you do a project like that, a lot of people think it's a really good idea and they just don't follow through.
Nobody follows
but
through.
You're one that follows through.
I do.
And that's important.
I do. I think it's important. I think you're right. It is important. Your word is your bond. And if you say you're going to do something, then, you know, to the best of your ability, do that. And if it doesn't work, then change it. But, you know, if you commit to something, try to follow it through.
Yep. Good advice.
It works for me.
I think might be overstating it, but it's probably a common theme with a lot of knights is that they actually just kept doing what they said they would do, and
Good or bad.
good or bad, and they persevere through the time period, and it just they get it.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
So if you trace in common with knights is doing what you say you're going to do. You heard it here.
Absolutely.
What are your some of your earliest memories after you started participating in Amtgard?
I remember a lot of the early parks of VSR. Iron Keep, I remember playing down along the river at the park in Eugene. At the time, VSR was Mystic Seas, which was kind of an offshoot. It was its own kingdom, so it wasn't part of VSR, but it was still in the Portland area. Portland had Mithril Hills at the time. Dark Valley between the Copper Shores or Copper Hills was Longview. And VSR, because it was Valley of the Silver Rains, most of the lands had some type of metal. Shrouded Valley was one of the few that did not.
Oh, okay.
That had some kind of a metal. So there was Iron Keep. There was Golden Glade, which was Sheridan, right outside of McMinnville. They were like really close to each other. There was Mithril Hills in Portland. There was Dark Valley between Copper Shores. I think it was Copper Shores. It might have been Copper Skies or Copper Hills. It was something, Dark Valley between the Copper something. It's been quite a long time, but Copper was in there. Shrouded Valley was the first one that didn't follow that same pattern. And interestingly enough, because I started there, it never occurred to me until after I'd been playing for a while that everybody else had metal except for Shrouded Valley. And so then the people who started it were like, well, maybe we need to go back and put a metal in there, but nothing worked. We were like, what do we do? Like, you know, argent something or, you know, lead. We tried everything and nothing fit. Nothing ever stuck. So we just kind of gave up with that.
Well, kind of glad you stuck with the original name.
Me too. I like Shrouded Valley. And the park there, I mean, it was the old city park in McMinnville, so you kind of went down a hill, and then it opened up, and there was a parking lot, and there was all these forested trails. And so the trees had grown up, and it was almost a grove in itself. So Shrouded Valley, it really fit the park, and it worked, and I'm glad it never changed.
Yeah, it makes more sense to name. I like naming over the park characteristics and stuff.
Agreed.
So
it gives a meaning to the name.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'm trying to think of some of the other memories. A lot of those early campouts, we camped year round, every month. Every park would play every week, and then once a month we had what's now a kingdom level event, but at the time it was a kingdom event once a month, and it was, you know, wherever it was going to be, and at the beginning of a reign, whoever the monarchy was, they would say, this park's going to get it this month, then we're going to go here, and then we're going to go here, and then they're going to host it, blah, blah. And we camped all over Portland, all over Oregon. I've camped Milo McIver State Park, back when you still could camp there. I camped Hebo Lake, which is halfway to the coast. It's like Grand Ronde area. Trying to think of some of the other places. We camped all over the place. We camped...
Did you use the Flying M Ranch?
Where's Flying M?
It's outside of like Yamhill. I was just thinking about old things back when I was still playing VSR.
We camped a lot of private land.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody would know somebody who had a land and there was a lake, and we would camp. We did day events in Longview, and we did a quest one time that went all the way around Lake Sacagawea, like the whole entire quest.
Oh, wow.
Went the entire perimeter of the lake, and it was a very long day, and we were all tired after that. I remember that one. And I remember Ashki was playing a wraith with a speech impediment. So she called herself a waif. People are like, so you're a waif? And she says, no, I'm a waif. And they're like, so you're a waif? And she says, no, I'm a waif. And they went, you're a wraith? And she said, yes. And it was, you know, back in the day when that kind of stuff was not as much of an issue as it is now, you know.
What was your first big inter-kingdom event?
Clan 95, I got knighted.
Oh, nice. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very big thing, especially since The monarch and I were the only two people who had traveled from our land to be down there. Got knighted at Inner Kingdom Court, which the Knights Circle voted to allow that to happen, but then when we came back, there were some knights who weren't there for the vote who weren't happy with it. And I understood, they didn't get to share in that.
Yeah.
They didn't get to be part of that whole thing. And that is a ceremony. A knighthood is just as much for the person receiving that award or that accolade as it is for the people who get to see it. And that's why knighthood needs to be a big spectacle and a big pageant, because it's just as much for the people who've never seen a knighthood before as it is for the person receiving it.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Important question.
Yes.
Did you do a revelry or a vigil before your knighting?
I did have a vigil. Yep. It was a very quiet, very private vigil. I had my bag of runes with me because it was the only thing that I could travel on an airplane and take. And couldn't take a sword, couldn't take all the other stuff. Vigils were not really a thing, and since nobody really knew who I was, we didn't plan to do that there. But I had my bag of runes with me and a little. I picked up in El Paso a little charcoal incense.
Oh, nice.
Self-lighting. You light it and it stays. And I had some little powdered incense with me and whatnot, and took a blanket, found a quiet, secluded spot far away from most of the other camps, and I had somebody there who was kind of watching over me. He was already a knight, standing and watching, making sure that nobody bothered me. And I basically just sat down with my runes and lit some incense and just meditated for a little bit and asked the runes, what is my counsel? And they gave me an answer. Now when other people are having their vigils, I always pass that along to them. It's one of those things, it's like, this was my counsel when I became a knight, so now I'm passing that on to you. Some people pay attention and some people don't.
Yeah.
But
it's a fun cultural tradition that I like
I agree.
that exists.
I agree. Some vigils have been really crazy. Some have been really loud. Some have been very, very quiet, very private. Sometimes they're one-on-one. Sometimes it's a giant party. Kind of just left up to the person who's being knighted how they want to do it.
Yeah. I did a revelry.
Nice. So did Darius.
They're fun. Calzar did a vigil, and he's one of the first that I actually participated in somewhat. That was fun. So I'm just really glad that that stuck around since you were a knight all the way up until our newer knights.
Absolutely.
What was the thing that first made you proud that you did in Amtgard?
I have always been a crafter, and my goal was always, my short-term goal when I first started was to have the title of Lady, because I thought Lady Aurora sounded pretty. So I just like it. I like it better than all the other titles. I mean, technically, I've been awarded Countess, I've been awarded Grand Duchess, I've been awarded Duchess, I've got other titles in there, so I do rank higher than Lady, but I just like Lady Aurora. I think Lady Aurora sounds pretty. So I've kind of stuck with that over the years, because that was my short-term goals. I wanted a title. My long-term goal was to become a Knight of the Serpent. And, eventually I went past that, and that was awesome. But Serpent was always where my heart has been, and it's always been a big part of who I am. And I think the first time I won a kingdom level ANS competition was probably one of my proudest moments. Nice. I don't know even which kingdom tournament that was. It was a Dragon Master, I'm sure. Realizing that I could was pretty awesome.
Do you remember anything you entered?
I'm sure there was Garb. Probably a couple of really early tabards that I'm sure I don't have anymore. I remember one time I entered a dream catcher. I'd bought a kit and I'd put it all together and I'd entered it, and it got a really, probably inflatedly high score because there weren't a lot of participants. And I even told the judges, I said, this was a kit. I did not make this from scratch. This was something that I bought just to see if I could do it, and I entered it because it was something that I had. And they were like, no, it's pretty, it's nice, you did a good job. And I was like, okay, well, just know that this was not created from scratch. And they didn't want to change their scores, but it meant something to me to make sure that they knew that it wasn't my own original creation. It was something that I was learning. And back in the day, everybody was learning. I mean, we didn't do applique, we did puff paint.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of really basic, really early stuff then, and I came into Amtgard already having a pretty good crafting skill set. I'd been sewing and doing needlework and embroidery since I was big enough to hold a needle and not stab myself with it.
Oh, wow.
And so, when I started in college, I'd been sewing for 20 years at that point, or close to 20 years. And the people who had already been doing that kind of work, had only been doing it a few years since they'd started. And I came in with a skill set that was already much higher than where they were. And it wasn't hard for me to climb the ladder very quickly because that's where my level was.
It doesn't hurt to have a leg up on your competition.
Right. So, you know, I think the other thing that I'm particularly proud of is that I am a cultural Olympian. So I've won the cultural portion of Olympiad, which is the Inter-Kingdom Arts and Sciences, and there's also a war component as well. Had I known that the year that I won culturals, there was nobody who had entered war and culturals.
Oh, you could have been the...
I could have won. I could have taken any points in any war competition and become Grand Olympian that year, and I didn't know until all the scores were done.
Oh, no.
Missed my opportunity there. Never is going to happen in a million years.
No,
Any other time, I totally missed that opportunity. So I'm sorry about that. It is a regret. But I am proud to say that I am cultural Olympian.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. It was a fun competition. And I did beat out some some good competition too. Sir Raphael, who was a 4-belted knight from Polaris, started in Burning Lands. He had entered that competition. He's also happens to be my real life brother-in-law. So, you know, some of his things had been sound. We did not take his stuff, but there was good competition there as well. That was the competition where I created the Elizabethan gown that I wore when I was queen.
Oh, wow.
That's why I created that particular outfit, was for Olympiad, because my goal was to win it. You know.
And you did.
And I did. So mission accomplished.
Thank you for joining us on the LARP Chats. Please thank my guest, Aurora, for joining us. And I will catch you next time.